There are very few games that teach us something we carry with us for the rest of our lives. How people can do good and awful things, and how we are ultimately flawed. How modern life isn't as perfect as we thought it was. A game might ask us how far we'd go to save someone we love, or show us that it can be hard to connect with the people we should be closest to. Games are a unique art form that ask us to empathise with a character in a way that no other piece of entertainment can, by putting us in their shoes and asking us to walk their path. Far Cry 2 is one of these games. It places us in a fictional African country where we work with both sides in a civil war. We play as a mercenary who's forced to commit awful acts to complete their mission, and the deeper down the rabbit hole we go, we start to question if any of this is justified. Will assassinating a notorious arms dealer actually stop this war, or is the problem too complex to be solved by the actions of one person? Far Cry 2 asks us these big questions and never gives us the answers, because sometimes there isn't one. Far Cry 2 starts as we enter the country to hunt down the Jackal, an arms dealer who's supplying weapons to both sides in this civil war. It's hoped that if we kill the Jackal, both sides will run out of firepower and be forced to make peace. As we enter the country, we're immediately shown that something isn't right. Cars are blown up on the side of the road, buildings are on fire, and we have to bribe an enemy soldier at a checkpoint to gain entry. Our driver highlights that planes have stopped entering the country, and there's no way out unless we can afford it. Soon after this, Ubisoft shows us we are a fragile human being. In Far Cry 2, we're not a super soldier with Wolverine healing, and we don't have a suit of armour with a handy shield to protect us. We are a regular mercenary who nearly dies during the first shootout in the game when the enemy storms our hotel and guns us down. There is no way for us to beat this encounter, and no matter how good we are at other shooters, we always lose during this moment. The way we're made to feel vulnerable is an essential part of the Far Cry 2 experience, as we need to feel overwhelmed throughout the game. Ubisoft wants this world to grind us down, so they made weapons degrade over time, and our resources are also finite. We can only heal using syrettes, or by literally pulling bullets out of our body to patch our wounds, and we need to restock our ammo by finding supplies in the open world. There are moments when we're low on resources and we have to weigh up our options. Do we push forwards to the next outpost to restock, or do we fall back to our safe house? Taking out a group of enemies when we're low on health will be challenging, but then the nearest safe house is 10 minutes in the opposite direction. Do we risk it or play it safe? It's not always a simple choice. This feeling makes it possible for Ubisoft to present mature themes throughout the game that force us to question our actions. We know we need to take down the Jackal, but in order to do that, we have to help the two warring factions, the UFLL and the APR, people who we know are using his weapons. We have no stake in this war, and we work with both factions for our own motives. Really, we don't care who survives and who rules this country. We have our mission, and we'll do anything if it helps us complete it. We might assassinate a leader of the UFLL, and then immediately retaliate by crippling the APR, or vice versa. We have to disconnect from our actions and simply do our job. This becomes difficult when we learn about the atrocities both sides have committed and have to ignore them. One time, for example, we learn a UFLL leader kidnaps children. That's one target we don't feel bad about assassinating, but this is just one man in a corrupt war. There could be tens of people like him who are left unchecked until this conflict ends. Put this thought to one side though, because soon afterwards we're back at the UFLL headquarters, reporting for duty.
Did you know the UFLL kidnaps children? Sells them. The commander and that trainer's made a fortune on little boys.
Ubisoft cleverly builds on these uncomfortable moments by forcing us to complete missions that harm regular people. People who were too late to escape and are unfortunately caught in the crossfire. In one mission, we destroy a set of irrigation pumps at an APR-protected farm to show local people the APR can't protect them. But by destroying the farm's source of water, the crops will die and people will starve. We can even go one step further here, when our buddy flies over the farm, dropping toxic chemicals killing the crops and poisoning the soil for good. As the game goes on and we harm more and more people, it's hard not to look back and reflect on our actions, our role in this conflict, on ourselves. In so much of the game, we spend hours alone with our thoughts, often driving across the map with no radio to keep us entertained, or AI companion telling us their life story. So many games today are terrified of losing our attention, so these moments of quiet are filled with random lines of dialogue, but it's just not required. Far Cry 2 understands we need downtime to contemplate the events of the game, and if our actions have made this world a better place. Our reputation works as a visual sign of our impact in the world. Reputation functions like similar systems in other RPGs. We complete missions to increase our reputation level, and as a result, the world changes around us. In Red Dead Redemption, for example, NPCs will recognise us in the open world as our reputation increases and the legend of our name spreads across the West.
Wow, you're John Marston. I don't believe it. I've heard so much about you.
This feature is also present in Far Cry 2, as guards treat us differently as we become more well known. But unlike Red Dead, our reputation isn't based on how famous we are. It's based on the violence we've unleashed in this country. When our reputation is low, guards will push us around to show us who's in charge. They think they're more powerful than we are, and so they'll shove us and make an offhand comment to keep us in line. At these low levels, we're no more violent than a regular foot soldier.
Oi, watch it. You're asking to get sorted out, asshole.
But as our reputation increases, guards start to fear us. Now our violence has made us one of the most dangerous people in the country, and the guards know not to cross us. If we approach them, they'll quickly back off, as they know they can no longer control us. As our reputation increases, we also see enemies increase their firepower to deal with our new perceived threat. A guard that usually has a sniper now might have an RPG, and patrolling guards on the back of a truck might have a 50 caliber turret instead of a standard machine gun. Ironically, our mission to cut off their supply of weapons has backfired, and Ubisoft are using this system to show us that our actions have made everything worse, an idea that was rare in shooters at the time. As we get closer to the Jackal, we learn that he isn't a generic villain. The Jackal is a complex character who, like most people in this world, has his own motives. The Jackal sees the war for what it is. He sees it as a disease that must be destroyed. We can't simply eliminate one person, as another will take their place, and nothing will change. He explains that the only way to destroy a disease is by quarantining the patients, and from this we understand his motives. He isn't the arms dealer we were sold, a man who's in this for money and his own gain. Really, the Jackal wants this conflict to end, and so he's locked both sides in this country and supplied them with weapons in the hope they will eliminate each other, ending the war for good. In his words, every cell of this cancer has to be destroyed.
The only way this is going to work is if we see it the whole way through to the end. Every cell of this cancer has to be destroyed.
That last point is important when we get to the end of the game, and what we're about to discuss is something that genuinely blew me away. It's something I've not been able to stop thinking about since beating the game last month. In the end, the Jackal realises his plan hasn't worked. The APR and UFLL haven't eliminated each other and instead have put down their weapons to make a truce. In a way, the war has ended and the country should be at peace. In reality though, this truce has again made everything worse. Both sides have joined forces and now there is no one to stand against them. They are the ruling faction and have free reign to do whatever they want. The Jackal then changes course and asks us to work with him to assassinate the leaders of both factions. This again forces us to question everything we've been through in the game. We've spent the entire game working for both factions to get close to the Jackal, and now we've finally reached our destination, we have to kill the people we've been working for all along. Everything we've done so far has been pointless. What's genius about this is that Ubisoft go one step further when we're given RPG-style choices to finish the game. We choose which leader to assassinate and who to spare, and we also get one final choice. The Jackal finally explains that we are also part of the problem. We are part of the cancer, and we also need to be eradicated. Our final act involves saving a group of refugees fleeing the country in one of two ways. We're given a choice to either blow up a bomb blocking the path for any guards chasing the refugees, or take a briefcase full of diamonds to bribe the guards at the border so the refugees are given safe passage. But there's one condition. We need to trigger the bomb up close, killing ourselves in the process, or when we get across the border, we shoot ourselves in the head, ending it once and for all. Now, none of this sounds special, as many games give us difficult choices that affect the ending of the game. But just as Ubisoft went against other gaming trends at the time, they made an incredibly bold decision here, and this is absolutely genius. What sets Far Cry 2 apart from other games is that our choices don't affect the ending. No matter who we choose to assassinate or which ending we pick, we always end up at the same point. The Jackal's body was never found, and anarchy rages on to this day. The country is still gripped by violence, and nothing we did at any point changed any of this. The people that suffered because of our actions suffered for no reason whatsoever. It was all pointless. This is a reason that Far Cry 2 is bleak. By the end of the game, we're completely worn down by the relentlessness of the open world, and then, just as we think we're about to make a difference, Ubisoft delivers a knockout punch. They show us that the world is nuanced, and simply seeing it as black and white, or good versus evil, or us v them, is not accurate. In reality, the world is so complicated that problems cannot be solved by one mercenary, or by removing one arms dealer, and sometimes our actions make everything worse. Ubisoft never gives us the answers to these big questions to tie the game together. They instead force us to ask these questions and find the answers on our own. Something that we might be searching for years of our lives. It's a good time to highlight that Far Cry 2 takes inspiration from Apocalypse Now, a film which was loosely based on the 1899 novella Heart of Darkness. One area in the final section of the game is actually called Heart of Darkness, which was a nice nod to the game's inspiration. There are similarities between Apocalypse Now and Far Cry 2, like how we go deeper and deeper into this country, just as Willard goes further down the river into Cambodia, and how nothing really changes by the end. And there are similarities between Kurtz and the Jackal. But the difference in Far Cry 2 is that we aren't just watching Willard descend into madness. We are Willard, and we descend into our own madness the more we play the game. How we're forced to commit awful acts, and how we see the world become a worse place because of our actions, only to be left at the end of the game questioning everything we've been through and what it all means. And that is an incredible statement for any piece of art to deliver. I can't think of another game that's left an impact on me quite like Far Cry 2, especially today, in this confusing world. If that sounds like a demoralizing experience that leaves us questioning the point of anything, then I want to highlight that there are moments of wonder too. The open world is stunning and as awe-inspiring as the best we have today. Whether it was watching the sun rising over the African plains, or that time I rode across the savannah with a group of gazelles running beside me, or travelling downriver by boat with no one else around me. These moments will be forever imprinted on my brain. One reason this works so well is due to the realism of the open world. There's nothing on screen to distract us, not even a compass on our HUD. The UI is only present in combat when we need to check our health or ammo, and even then it's restricted to the far corners of our screen. More broadly, we interact with this world manually with no menus in sight. We'll pick up boxes of ammo by reaching out and grabbing them, and we open doors by manually grabbing the handle and forcing it open. At the gun shop, we buy items by logging onto the gunsmith's website and adding items to our basket before we check out. And we fix our vehicle by using a wrench on the engine. Items don't magically teleport into our inventory, and there's no loadout menu where our weapons are neatly categorized by their type. We're kept in the moment at all times, and as a result, the open world feels authentic as a real place. Ubisoft included the tiniest of details to keep this illusion going, and they succeed every time. They take the most routine of activities, like picking up a mission, and turn it into this completely immersive experience. When we pick up a mission, we go to the local town and head to a faction's headquarters. We walk up to the guard on the door, who frisks us and confiscates our weapons. Then we head upstairs and be briefed with no cutscene whatsoever. We just stand there and listen to these people talk.
Our friend has returned. Perhaps you'll help us put an end to this once and for all.
Then we collect the mission dossier and head back downstairs to collect our weapons. No loading screen, no change in camera angle, nothing. When driving too, everything is designed to keep us in the moment, as we never need to pause the game and check a map in a menu. Usually in an open world game, we'd plonk down a marker and then follow a waypoint on our minimap or arrows projected in the game world. But in Far Cry 2, this never happens, as it would make the open world feel like a game. Instead, we navigate through the world manually using our in-game map, with our GPS used to pinpoint our position rather than give us directions. This turns what would be a throwaway feature in another game into one of Far Cry 2's core mechanics. Part of the Far Cry 2 experience is mastering our map reading skills, as we learn how to move through the world in a way which we don't in most games today. We have to meticulously plan our route through the world by checking which roads link up to get us to our destination. But the thing is, this isn't as simple as it sounds, as there's more we have to consider. Does our route cross outposts, for example? And are there any shortcuts we can take to avoid them? Can we go off-road into the desert or zip through a mountain range to avoid the guards? Then, when we're travelling to our destination, we have to be aware of our surroundings at all times. We have to make sure we're going the right way by checking the map, all while trying to keep our vehicle on course. It's not as brutal as something like GTA 3, where there's no in-game map whatsoever and we have to use a paper map that came in the box with the game. There are road signs in the world to help us, and they'll highlight a certain colour to show us which road to take. But we still never go into autopilot, mindlessly following our GPS, or blasting past our surroundings with our eyes glued to our minimap. The only map markers we need are guard outposts, which are positioned on roads so we always encounter them, and we never scoop up collectible markers like we do today. All collectibles are hidden from us to encourage us to explore on our own. The open world will not work for everyone, by the way. People who are looking for a slick experience full of well-thought-out quality of life systems will be frustrated by Far Cry 2. Constantly checking our map every time we travel somewhere, and the constant need to return to the armory to pick up our weapons, can be a chore. It is effort, and it does take a lot out of us. But I'm going to be really cliched and say that Far Cry 2 is a game that's about the journey and not the destination. There are no handcrafted set pieces waiting for us in each mission, and the missions are unfortunately identical on paper. A mission will ask us to assassinate someone, or blow up something, and other than a few rare examples, that's it. The thing is though, these missions aren't identical when we play them because of Far Cry 2's dynamic systems. Far Cry 2 is a masterclass in emergent gameplay with systems that create incredible moments out of nothing. For example, when we travel across the map, no two journeys are the same, even on the same roads. This is because guards patrol the open world and will engage us whenever we cross their path. Sometimes this is simple, where we deal with one or two guards, but there are other times when a group of patrols will cross our path at the worst time and join the fight together. What would usually be a small skirmish now turns into a fight for survival. We might be forced to retreat into the nearby jungle and be locked in a shootout for 5 to 10 minutes, using trees as cover and picking off enemies as they follow us in. I have so many memories of these shootouts that went on for an age, before I finally took down the last guard and survived the encounter. And it all happened from nothing. The enemy AI helps elevate these moments as they play tactically to put pressure on us. They'll push up the battlefield and try to flank us. And they'll reposition, making it hard to keep track of them. And if an enemy goes down, sometimes they'll sit up and try to shoot us with their dying breath. But it's really during the bigger outposts where the game comes into its own, as the dynamic systems coalesce to create moments of chaos. As our weapons degrade over time, they could jam in the middle of a big outpost battle. We might charge forwards, only for our weapon to jam as we take our shot, or an enemy could charge at us, only for our gun to jam as soon as they open fire. In these moments, we have to frantically smash unjam just so we can shoot at the enemies in front of us. Other times, our weapons will straight up break, leaving us unarmed in the middle of a battle. We can pick up an enemy's weapon they've dropped, but these are always in bad shape, usually heavily degraded and with heavy recoil. And it's within these moments where everything spirals out of control. Running out of resources and starting to panic, we might misfire and accidentally shoot a box of ammo, causing it to explode bullets into the arena in all directions. We could shoot an explosive barrel, causing a fire to break out that engulfs the arena, or a random grenade could destroy a key piece of cover, leaving us or the enemy exposed. It's always best to check the cover we're using, as weaker materials like corrugated iron can be shot through, rendering them useless. For every outpost, it's a good idea to survey the area before we head in to plan our attack. We might want to identify a getaway vehicle in case we need to escape, or locate a point to restock ammo if we're running low. And it's always a good idea to check the map to identify ways into the outpost to avoid alerting the guards. Stealth is great to thin out enemy numbers, especially if we sneak into an outpost under the cover of darkness, but I found most times I was spotted, and then these systems always worked against me. For example, starting a fire can help turn the tide of battle, but it's also one of the most riskiest strategies, as it's impossible to predict how the fire will react. It's one of the most impressive features in Far Cry 2, and the way fire spreads through the world might be the most realistic I've seen in a game. The team at Ubisoft spent around a year and a half of the 3-year development cycle just to make sure the fire was realistic. Vegetation, fuel, and anything wooden can catch alight, and environmental conditions affect how quickly the fire spreads. If the wind is blowing in the right direction, a small controlled fire can quickly turn into a blaze if the vegetation is dry enough. If it's misty or humid, the moisture will quickly put out the fire, or it will extinguish the flames before they catch. Apparently, fire propagation is also affected by other elements like altitude, but I never found the right environments to fully test this. If it's true though, that's insane. Fire can be helpful, as we can use it to disrupt the battle and distract enemies. When a fire breaks out, enemies will stop shooting at us to reposition and escape the flames, or they'll flee completely if the fire grows out of control. But then there's a huge risk here, as the fire could spread rapidly and harm us in the process. One time, in fact, I started a fire causing the enemy to reposition, but then they found safe ground behind me and shot me in the back. The fire, intelligent AI, and other dynamic systems are impressive, as it's something we don't see as often today. But I just want to highlight that there are other games that have features like Far Cry 2. GTA 4, for example, which released in the same year, also includes realistic fire that's extinguished by the rain. But the difference in Far Cry 2 is that these mechanics are included to benefit gameplay, whereas in GTA 4 they're mainly used for realism. The spread of fire in GTA 4 is never a core mechanic that drastically changes combat, whereas in Far Cry 2, all of these systems work together to elevate the simplest of moments to the next level. And look, I think GTA 4 is a masterpiece, but hopefully you get my point. It's one reason that I think Far Cry 2 had a lukewarm reception when it launched, because these dynamic systems create unique experiences from one player to the next. The encounters aren't scripted, which means everything relies on the emergent gameplay. And if you play Far Cry 2 the wrong way, these moments won't happen for you. We have to play Far Cry 2 the right way, or it doesn't work. We have to start fires to force the enemy to react in interesting ways. We have to manage our resources to appreciate the survival mechanics. We have to experiment with different weapons to create new gameplay. And we have to study the map, plan our route through the world, and carefully think about how we tackle an outpost. If you play Far Cry 2 like a conventional shooter and charge in through the front door of every outpost, you will have a terrible time. So, it's time to discuss the frustrating parts of Far Cry 2, parts that still exist 15 years later, and these are issues that could ruin the game for you. The biggest frustration is due to the ruthlessness of the patrolling guards. These moments did create incredibly tense encounters, but being constantly hounded by guards isn't always great for gameplay. Sometimes we need breaks to stop these encounters wearing thin, and we don't have that here. An enemy patrol will turn up and easily immobilize our vehicle by unloading a turret into us. This then stops us from escaping and forces us to deal with the enemies. We have to jump out of our car or hop on our own turret to take them down, and then repair our vehicle so we can continue with our journey. Sometimes we can repair our vehicle if we have cover while enemies are engaging us, but 9 times out of 10 we can't. As we can't trigger the repair animation when we're getting shot, we always have to engage in combat. This makes moving through the world frustrating as we're constantly stopping and starting. Stop to deal with enemies, stop to repair our vehicle, start driving for a few minutes, only to stop when another patrol turns up. There are upgrades to speed up the repair process for each vehicle, but it doesn't fix the stop-start nature of moving through the world. In fact, I'd say this happens every time we're on the road, at least every 5 to 10 minutes if not sooner. One time I was making a 5-minute journey and had to stop 3 times as 3 separate patrols attacked me. It was just too much. And I know there are ways to manage this if we play Far Cry 2 the right way. We can plan routes that go off-road and avoid guard outposts, or take the river so there's less chance of encountering enemies. It's also a good idea to always use a vehicle with a turret, so we can deal with enemies quickly and hopefully we don't have to jump out to repair the engine. But let me say, I did play Far Cry 2 this way, and it didn't fix these issues. Sometimes we're forced to take the road, or the river will be full of enemies too. Other times, our vehicle gets stuck in the open world, forcing us to continue on foot. Cars get stuck on rocks, cars get stuck on vegetation, and cars even get stuck underneath other cars. And because there's no easy way to fast travel, there is nothing we can do here. There are bigger issues here though, and this is due to a handful of half-baked systems that needed to go further, especially the Buddy and the Malaria systems. Our buddies are supposed to be like RPG companions that help us throughout the game. Our best buddy gives us alternative ways to beat a mission, and our rescue buddy will revive us in combat and then fight by our side to help us win the fight. This is where the buddy system is great, as the alternative objectives are far more interesting than the generic go here, do a thing main missions. They involve more steps than the regular way, and usually open up new gameplay set in completely different areas of the map. Sometimes these differences are huge, like completely new levels, whereas other times they're more subtle, like reinforcements joining the fight, or less enemies present in an arena. Generally, they make the mission longer, but if we're willing to put in the legwork, our final objective will be much easier to clear. One mission, for example, asks us to assassinate an arms dealer for the APR, who's hiding out on a barge. Completing this the regular way means we assault the barge from the water, jump on board, and eliminate our target up close. But when we complete this mission the alternative way, we steal the fuse for a bomb and blow up the bridge above the barge. The wreckage of the bridge then falls onto the barge and instantly kills our target, saving us the trouble of attacking the barge ourselves. The buddies don't quite work, as Ubisoft wants us to bond with them so that when they die it feels like we've lost a best friend. Like how in XCOM, it's heartbreaking when our favourite soldier dies in battle, or how we lose RPG companions after tens of hours together and have to deal with the consequences of their death. But the problem is, the buddies in Far Cry 2 aren't RPG companions. They don't join us on our journey, as they only exist in certain places or certain moments. And they aren't XCOM soldiers, because they don't join us for every battle. They only appear when we need reviving, and then they disappear. This means the buddies are an odd middle ground between both systems that never reaches the same heights. I never felt the same way as I did in other games where I lost a companion. And that's a shame, because this system could have been great. The way the buddies are handled at the end of the game will also annoy a lot of people. The buddies are involved in a huge plot twist that doesn't land like Ubisoft intended it to. When we go to collect the briefcase full of diamonds at the end of the game, we see our buddies waiting for us. As the buddies are allies, we think they're here for support, but in actual fact, when we grab the blood diamonds, our buddies open fire and try to kill us. The people we've been working with throughout the game are now our enemies. It's intended to be a shocking moment that shows our buddies are flawed mercenaries just like us, but in practice, it's another frustration. Because it comes out of nowhere, with no foreshadowing or build-up, we end up more confused than shocked as it's not clear what's just happened. There's a few odd lines as we approach this encounter where our buddies are discussing why they're betraying us, but I bet most people would miss this like I did. I checked the arena, saw my buddy, and ran towards the briefcase only to be confused why they were suddenly attacking me.
We're okay, I'm sorry.
Goodbye.
Throughout the game, we also have to manage our malaria infection by taking medication. About every 30 to 40 minutes of real time, our symptoms worsen and we have to hit the heal button to take our pills. This idea in itself isn't necessarily bad, as having an infection adds to the overall theme that this country is hostile. My problem with this system is due to how we get our medication, as we're forced to complete the same missions over and over. We drive to an underground network safe house, pick up some passports, and then drive them across the map to deliver them. There's a few guards to fight outside each safe house, but other than that, it's a FedEx-style delivery mission, the worst type of mission we have in gaming. There's no variation here. There's never a unique story to make each one interesting, or a slight twist on the objective to create new gameplay. We simply pick up the passports and deliver them the same way every time. To be clear, these missions can be ticked off in about 10 minutes, and Ubisoft also made sure the underground networks were positioned near bus stops so we can fast travel to them easily. But we're still forced to run the same missions multiple times across our playthrough. I can't help but think this system could have been improved by giving us different ways to find medication, so we're not funneled into these lackluster missions. Let us find medication in the open world by making some blood diamond locations have medication alongside them. Or make enemies drop medication as a rare drop that we pick up once we've defeated them. Sure, that sounds a bit gamey, but it does make sense in this world. I mean, we can't be the only person in this country with malaria. I'm sure some of these soldiers we're fighting are infected too. Because, as it stands, the malaria mechanic is a system that benefits the themes of the game instead of the gameplay.
Finally awake.
When we think about other legendary games, it's easy to highlight their imperfections too. The Last of Us has basic gameplay. The missions in Red Dead Redemption 2 are outdated and arguably too linear. and God of War has too many enemies that repeat and some questionable moments in the narrative. But there's one thing all of these games have in common. They all excel in their own areas that makes them stand out compared to other games. An emotional, mature narrative, a band of complex characters, incredible set pieces juxtaposed against somber moments between a father and a son. Playing these games, there is really nothing else like it out there, and it's exactly the same for Far Cry 2. Far Cry 2 has flaws that will put people off this game for good, but it's also a game with a laser-focused vision that presents this world as an imperfect, ruthless place. It has an authentic open world with realism at its core, and dynamic systems that create incredible gameplay from nothing. And it's for these reasons that Far Cry 2 also excels well above the majority of other shooters out there. There's a saying in film that a good film is one you think about days after watching it, one that gets under your skin that you can't shake off. Well, I've been thinking about Far Cry 2 for weeks, and I know I will for many years to come. And just like in film, there's a word we have for this in gaming.